again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We've got a good topic for you today, and let's stay up late and listen. Night Owls of Reddit. What's the strangest thing that's happened to you while everyone else was asleep? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
As many of us were back then, I was gaming. The first Modern Warfare 2 had dropped recently, and I had an entire wrestling team of friends with Xboxes. Great fun. 1 a.m. rolls around, the summer night air wafting in through both open windows, in between bites of pizza rolls, and our UAV is online. I swear, I hear someone say, "Help me!" Freaks you out a bit if you're completely unsure, and that particular phrase isn't uttered often. I pause and listen, taking off one side of my Turtle Beaches. A good half a minute passes, nothing. I tell my friends about it, they roast me, telling me I'm imagining it. I shrug it off. Again, I swear I think I heard someone distinctly say, "Help me." I fully take off my headset and wait. Sooner this time, and sure enough, there it is. A third time, and I hear clear. A voice I do not recognize. "Can someone help me?" Bone-chilling desperation in their voice. The bottom level of the house, which I'm playing in, is below grade, with the windows maybe a foot above the soil outside. Below the deck, I'm 3 feet from that window, feeling my teenage soul leave my body in fear. I run upstairs in a panic and inform my parents, dressed in bedwear and armed with an airsoft gun. We investigate. An elderly woman with dementia got lost a few hours before and had wandered into our backyard, fell and became delirious. We called the police and she was taken to the hospital, confused but unharmed. Glad to have helped her that day. Also, glad to prove my entire team wrong. Felt nice. I was sitting up playing Xbox at like 3 a.m. and some guy kicked in my front door. As I'm windmilling, falling backwards out of my chair, I sit in a computer chair while I game. I see my 100-pound black lab fly through the house, jump and knock this guy back through the doorway. My dog was straight eating this guy. The intruder, he's screaming like he's being fed feet first into a wood chipper. I finally run to the door and see this guy sprinting down the street and my dog hot on his heels. I call the cops and they show up. I give them the report, and about 20 minutes into, my dog comes sauntering up like he's the best thing since individually wrapped cheese slices. The cops were like, "Is he friendly?" To which I remember saying something to the effect of, "I thought he was." My dog was and is the biggest ham of a lab, all cuddles and kisses, until you kick in my door at 3 a.m. Drifted a bit on the couch in the den with my head on the couch armrest. I woke up when I felt the tiniest little paw tentatively reaching out and putting weight on my head. For some reason I didn't jerk away. Then a second paw started reaching into my hair. I slowly sat up to look at what was going on. A large brown rat had found its way into the house, up the couch, and was gently climbing onto my head. I coaxed him down to the couch and he didn't run away. I just have a rat calmly looking at me from the armrest of the couch. Eventually, I got him into a box and released him into a field. Weird way to get a little friend at 2 a.m.
Well, you were really cool about it. I could see how a lot of people would just freak the hell out if that happened to them. Rats are pretty smart, but they also generally live in a lot of filth.
I, female, used to clean movie theaters. Our shifts would start at 2 a.m. On a slow weekday night, I decided to go out and pick up the trash in the parking lot around 4 to 5 a.m. The theater was also next to a super busy road, so people passing by could see into the parking lot clear as day. I had headphones in and grabby thing in my hand to pick up gross stuff when I suddenly get a call from my boss, who's inside the building. She tells me she just saw a truck pull into the parking lot on the opposite side of where I was, and we weren't expecting any vendors today. As she says this, the truck pulls up next to me and stops as a man starts to open his door. There was a clear moment when he started to lean out and then saw that I was on the phone call. I had seen my screen facing him because I was talking to my boss through the headphones, and the grabby thing over my shoulder like a baseball bat. He sees my hands, then looks up at me and says, "Looks like it might snow today," then closes his door and drives off. I'm 100% sure if my boss didn't call me, that man would have tried to grab me into his truck. I then warned everyone that no one should do the parking lot garbage until it's light out and to always be on alert. My partner works overnight, so I'm up during the night often. My experiences include a group of teenage girls just sitting in our backyard and watching a toddler play in the street alone around 3 a.m. I called the police. The toddler was safely taken home. My creepier experiences actually occurred more around 5 to 6 a.m. with the sun up, when you'd think people would be a little less willing to be creepy. Once around 5:30, I felt watched, glanced up and saw a man peeking through the gap in our blinds. He bolted away. Another time, my partner told me he'd be home in under 5 minutes, so I unlocked our front door. A man was in the process of crossing the street, looked up and grinned at me like I'd opened it just for him. He made a beeline for our house and I slammed and locked the door so fast. Definitely a different man than the blind peeker. I was up late screwing around on the internet as usual. Everyone else was in bed, and something was clattering out on the deck. I ignored the noise at first. I figured it was just the wind rattling trash can lids I'd hung on the bird feeder to inconvenience the squirrels, but the racket kept going, and my mind started to wander. Might be a raccoon, I thought. Maybe it crawled into the barbecue looking for food scraps. Maybe there are two of them in there, trying to make more raccoons. The noise continued. I stood up, walked over to the sliding door and turned on the outside light. They were the CFL bulbs that take about a week to warm up, so I couldn't see much, and what I could see looked normal. Whatever was making the noise kept doing whatever it was doing. By this point I was getting nervous. I was annoyed that I was nervous, and I was annoyed that some pissant trash panda was making me nervous. So I opened the door, stuck my head outside, and asked, "Can I help you?" A bear stared back from 10, maybe 20 feet away. It was standing on its back legs, making it about as tall as I was. Its front paws gripped the bird feeder, which, despite the bear's best efforts, remained connected to the house. I stood there for a few seconds until my brain's pattern recognition software decided that, yep, that's a bear all right, and then I ducked back inside. When I looked back, the bear was gone, leaving behind a damaged bird feeder with a smashed trash can lid on top. We don't hang bird feeders anymore. When I was a new mom shortly after my grandmother had died, we visited her rural lake cottage several states away. It was a small 2-story structure with the bedrooms being situated on the second floor. My son was only about 4 to 6 weeks old, so I was worried that he would keep my other family members awake at night with needing to be fed, being new to the world, etc. Well, the inevitable happened, and my son would not stop fussing in the middle of the night. I decided to go outside with my little guy to get a bit of fresh air. The cottage had burned down to the chimney a couple of years earlier, and the house had been rebuilt, so I wasn't familiar with its new tits and bits. I went outside, and apparently the door was unlocked from the inside, but the outside lock was engaged. Now here I am, in the middle of pretty much nowhere, locked out of the house at 3 a.m. with a newborn. I knocked on and tried the door again and again, and could not get it to open. I even threw pebbles and threw rocks at my husband's window to no avail. As I sat outside the door, my back leaning against it, about to lose it completely, I heard a click. The door was unlocked. The door that I tried dozens and dozens of times to open simply unlocked. Everyone was still soundly asleep and didn't recall hearing any noises at all in the morning. The door had a window, and I could see the entirety of the bottom floor through it. No one was there, but it unlocked for me. There have been a few times over the past few months when it sounded for all the world like someone was walking around on the roof. I figured to begin with it was tree branches in the wind, but most of the time it happened, it simply wasn't windy. I know it's nothing in the attic because the attic is so filled with insulation it's impossible to enter. I figure it's probably the wind too high up for me to see through the window, or else the raccoons climbing up on the roof for some reason. We've sighted like 4 effing raccoons in the area. But damned if it doesn't sound like hooves. Naturally, I've told the kids it's the devil, so they salted their windowsills.
Or instead of saying it was the devil making your children afraid of your house, you could have said it's like Santa and he's keeping tabs on you guys to be good all year. Unless you're not into Christmas, which then Satan.
I was living with my mother at the time, was up late watching TV, and heard my mother awake out of a deep sleep and fearfully exclaim, "Hey, hey, 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 hey." When I ran in to see what was wrong, she informed me that there were 2 little boys staring at her from the bedroom doorway. Suddenly, they both took off running toward her bed to jump into her. Then they immediately disappeared. It was like just an extremely realistic dream, but frightening nonetheless. I was up late in the living room of my parents' house writing a paper for school. My boyfriend at the time was living with us in a room off the living room and down at the end of the hallway, Closest to the door into the living room from said hallway was a bathroom and another bedroom. So, I'm writing this paper, and I look away from it for a bit to take a mental break. It's like 2 a.m. at this point, I think. Some motion catches my eye, so I glance up at the door leading into the hallway, and I see a face peeking partially through the doorway from the hall, and then the person runs fast and jumps behind the love seat next to me. So I'm thinking, oh, that's my boyfriend trying to scare me because he knows I'm up late and distracted. I get up and peek behind the love seat saying, haha, really funny, but I saw you. Nobody was there. So I stand there puzzled a minute like, where could he have gone without me seeing? And then I hear his bedroom door open and he goes walking half asleep down the hall and into the bathroom. Still don't know what was up with that, lol. Gave me the creeps though. I was up late playing video games in the house alone around 3 in the morning. My dad was working the late shift and came home in the morning, but sometimes he'd come home for lunch break halfway through the night, grab a quick bite, and head back out. I heard the front door unlocking, open up, and someone step into the house. I paused the game and I yelled down the hall, "Hey Dad." He always responded. This time he didn't. I yelled down the hall again, "Dad, that you?" No response. My heart sunk into my stomach and I was frozen in fear. I sat there for a few seconds and then stood up. I slowly walked down the hall to the front door. The door was locked, deadbolt and all. I flipped on all the lights and started searching every area of the house, scared to death someone came in and was hiding in my house. But I couldn't find anyone. In the morning, I asked my dad if he had come home, but turned around and immediately left. But he said he brought lunch with him that night and didn't come home to eat. I still think about that night over 10 years later. I can't explain what happened. I heard the lock, the door, and someone come into the house as clear as crystal, but no one came in. I can't explain it. Not quite when everyone was sleeping, but rather when I had decided to go to bed early one night. I lived with my grandma. At the time, we had a full house because it was a holiday, and we had family that was going to sleep over. I gave up my bed to someone else that night because no one wanted to share a bed with grandma, and I didn't really mind. She had a king-size bed, and it was more comfortable than mine anyway, so really a win-win. The only weird thing was that she never took off the plastic wrap the bed came in, so it would crinkle like a bag of chips when you moved. She was probably just trying to keep it in good condition, I guess. My grandma's house wasn't huge, and with the way it was set up, I could hear everyone laughing and carrying on just down the hall, maybe 20 feet away max. As I went to bed, I left the hall light on and the door slightly open. I had barely had my eyes closed for a few minutes when I felt the end of the bed shift like someone had sat down and heard the distinct crinkle from the movement. I opened my eyes to see if Grandma had come to bed, and instead of seeing her, all the hair on my body stood up because there was no one there. Not only was no one there, but it happened again, but it came closer to me, and I saw the comforter move under the pressure of an invisible weight, like someone taking a few steps towards me, and I heard the crinkling again. I ducked under the covers and did not dare look out for 10 or so minutes, and while I waited for something to get me, I listened to everyone's voices in the next room and counted everyone. There's no way anyone could have quickly scared me without me hearing the door move. There was no room under the bed. No one could have pranked me. I know I didn't hallucinate because I didn't fall asleep or even get drowsy. And to top it off, I had a light source and could see the whole room. There was no one there. Nothing else ended up happening, but to me, that was something more terrifying about it because it wasn't the dead of the night and my family was in the other room. I lived in a duplex for a number of years, and pretty much since day one I'd hear noises like someone moving around upstairs. Only problem, we lived in a single-story building. I figured that even in the worst-case scenario, someone was secretly living in the attic, we'd probably hear it if they ever climbed into my apartment, as if they'd need to step onto a washer or dryer and open squeaky and generally loud accordion doors. One night, our daughter threw up on our bed in the middle of the night. My wife and I sleep on the couch, and I hear a loud crunching sort of noise that I can't identify coming from the kitchen, right in view of the couch, but I see nothing, mostly because of how dark it was. The next morning, my wife asks if I heard the sounds in the kitchen. I spend a few more nights on the couch to see if I can catch the sound again. It happens multiple times every night, and I finally catch what was making the noise. A rat had been sneaking into the kitchen and just wandering. The noise we heard was the rat entering the kitchen through a gap between the wood and metal then walking into the linoleum. After that, it all made sense, and we started noticing all sorts of other rat noises, like the one in the attic.
Another rat makes its way into this post today. It's funny how in the middle of the night, nocturnal animals seem to dominate this when we think it could be something else. Bears, raccoons, rats. Kinda makes sense, right?
Scarier more than creepy. We had rented a cabin in northern Michigan. It had a pretty nice screened-in porch. The bottom part of it was permanent glass, though. I was just laying there watching the stars roll by, kind of drifting in and out of sleep. Eventually, I decided it's time to go to bed and get some proper sleep, and I knocked a beer bottle over as I stood up. It made a loud noise, and this screaming noise came from just outside the porch, along with 3 very fast knocks on the glass. I freaked out, darted inside, and flipped on the lights. Nothing by the window, but off about 30 feet into the yard was a freaking mountain lion staring back at me with these white, yellow eyes. Pretty sure it had settled against the house for the night, and I freaked it out when I got up and swiped the glass in defense. In that moment, in the dark, I was quite sure it was a possessed spirit. My junior year of college, all 2 of my 3 roommates were big into partying, staying out at night, having people come in and out at all hours, and the third often stayed out studying, doing projects until 2 to 3 a.m., doing engineering stuff. Basically the front door, only door, never got locked, and I resorted to locking and blocking my bedroom whenever I left. Anyways, there was a fridge in the living room that I religiously stocked. I always wanted a cold drink. A few months went by, and the money started appearing on the counter, and a drink or 2 would go missing a few days a week. Each of us had our own specific stuff, and would let others know if we were taking something, and shit was going missing on a weekly basis, often money being left behind. One Friday, I ended up staying up extra late, like 4 a.m. late, and I hear the front door open and close. I creep out to a large, probably 6'5" unit of a dude is sitting on the couch, drinking a beer wearing all black, who then says, "Hey man, I'm going to bed, keep it down." I thought he was a roommate's friend or a party guy who got left behind, so whatever. He was gone by the time I went out in the morning to make breakfast. No one knew who he was. Turns out, this guy had been drunkenly stumbling into our apartment for probably 5 months on an almost weekly basis because I saw money on the counter. He was sleeping on the couch and leaving before anyone woke up, since none of us tended to leave our room until noon or so on the weekends. This guy could have easily overpowered any and all of us and robbed us blind for months in the end, and instead slept there and left. I started locking the front door at night and told everyone, bring your own key or you're out by 2:30 a.m. And a few nights he would come by and start knocking on the door and incoherently yelling until he wandered off. We had probably 40 people come into our apartment on accident or because they could come over the course of the year. I really hate when people don't lock the front door behind them now, years later.